Hello everyone! Today I thought I'd do a quick breakdown of my track May Jazz Fusion Jam from last week and talk about some of the behind the scenes elements of production and composition. So I did a few interesting things that I thought you might be interested to see, so we're going to do a quick breakdown. If you haven't already listened to the track, there's a link in the description, or there should be a link, one of those little pop-up things up here, if you want to go take a look at the video before watching this video so you have a bit of context, or just follow along and hopefully you can see what's going on. So we're going to start over here in Noteflight. This is a program that I use for a lot of my composing and arranging when it comes to actual sheet music. So you can see here the actual title of the track, Orchids, title of the video, May Jazz Fusion Jam. Where I started for this track was a little guitar melody, and I started just playing around the guitar and I found this melody and I kind of really liked it, and that's what I based the track around. And that's this melody here, which sounds like this. And then it kind of loops a little bit. That's this melody here. And I started just playing around with the melody, and then I decided what chords I would put under it. So oftentimes I start with chords and then add melody over the top. This time I started with the melody and then figured out some chords for it. And the melody lent itself to this little line cliche, we call it. This kind of static harmony, this progression over static harmony, where we have an E major chord, an E augmented or E plus chord, an E6, or you could think of it like a C sharp minor, and then back down to E augmented. And the reason this melody kind of really lends itself to this chord progression is because we're clearly based around E with this little arpeggio-ish figure here, going from the root to the fifth to the major seventh, then the root up an octave, and then the ninth. So we're kind of clearly based around E, and I was thinking in E, but then the melody kind of has this little line here that leads us down to C sharp, and then down to C natural, and it's that C sharp to C natural that really lends itself to this chord progression, because the way this line cliche is working is it's an E major chord, but then the top note, or in this case I voiced it to be the middle note, raises up, so we've got a B going up to C natural, then up to C sharp, and then back down to C natural. So the chord kind of stays the same, but there's one moving part that kind of moves through it, and that is reflected in the melody, and that's how I kind of came up with the chords to this melody. Then in the kind of B section, the melody slightly changes and the chords slightly changed. So we keep the same opening little thing here, but then instead of going to the C sharp augmented, we go down to a D, and the reason for that is that we're taking this F sharp here, which was the ninth over here of the chord, is now the third, and that allows us to kind of take the same melody but move it in a different direction. And then I changed the figure slightly to get us to an A, and then up, resolving to an E in the melody, but the chords don't quite resolve. We have an E minor 7 sus here, which resolves down to an E minor 9 when we get to the wash. So let's take a quick listen to that. We'll listen to the A section and then into the B section with the sheet music. So you can hear there, it kind of resolves down here when we get to this E minor 9. Let me just... Yeah, that's right. So this E minor 9 section is kind of a resolution. And you can see here, I didn't have anything written out. I knew that when I recorded it, I would have 4 bars to just noodle around on the bass, play some nice pretty chords on the keys, and do some little plucky sounds on the guitar. I'll talk about why I added that section in when I get to a bit of the production. This next section, this C section, you can see is very simple when it's laid out, but it sounds kind of complex when we play it. Let's play this C section here. We'll get to that next section in a second. But this C section, what I'm doing is using what I call the Cory Wong 16th note exercise. And that's this exercise where we play constant 16th notes on the guitar And then the first bar we accent the on beat, right? So we play 1, 2, 3, 4. Then in the second bar we hit the E of each beat. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then in the third bar we hit the and. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then in the last bar of the pattern, it's the A of each beat. So 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A. I'm clicking and counting a bit off there. But I can do it on the guitar, and that's what matters. So that's this kind of strumming pattern. And you'll see in the video that there's the strumming pattern. We also have this chug guitar, which is hitting the first on beat, or the first accent of each bar, which shifts position in each bar. The bass is doing the same thing, and then the keys are doing the same thing. And when I was recording, I added a melody over the top, and I added a couple extra notes in the bass to keep the support there. But basically, that's what's going on in that section, is we're working with this 16th note pattern that slightly changes each bar, but we're maintaining constant 16th notes throughout. That's an exercise that I use all the time when I'm practicing, and I teach it to a lot of my students. But I found despite how much I practiced it, I didn't really use that too much in my composition. I used similar things, but I thought, wouldn't it be great to take the exercise that I practice and actually use that exact exercise as part of a piece? And I got that one from Cory Wong. I think that I'll put a video link in the description from where I got that. But that's an exercise that I have heard. Cory Wong says that he practices it. I really love his music and everything he does. So I decided to include this exercise in my practice, and I decided to include it here in this piece. We then have this melody going into the D section. Let's listen to that with the music. Let's do the C section into the D section. Into that original melody. So for this D section, I composed this in a very similar way to the A section. Started with the melody, and I had this and it was, again, these key notes in the guitar melody that informed my harmony. So it was this B natural down to B flat that I kind of wanted to get this G major 7 to E minor 7/5/5 or E half diminished chord. And then this this was a little bit clearer with this pattern here. But then ending on this F natural was really kind of, I heard that note. And I didn't really know what the harmony was going to be, but when I could have done like an F major chord, and I tried an F major chord, but that felt really weird stepping down from F major back down to E for when we get back to this section. So I found that going to the 4 chord of the key, we're in E here, going to an A chord really worked. But to get that F natural in there, I went with an A+. And actually in the recording, I should add this in. It is actually, oh no, it's there. This is an A+, A7+, right? A dominant 7. So we have that G natural in there as well as the C sharp. Yeah, there's the augmented 5th, which is F natural, or you can think E sharp, and then the A in the bass. So, and then this complicated bass line that I came up with for it as well, just to follow those chords and add a little bit of oomph to the guitar melody. And then to finish off, it's just the same melody on the way out as the beginning. And at the beginning, and the very intro, which we haven't talked about yet, is basically just, again, introducing that chord pattern and then this little keys lick to get us in. So let's take a look over at the production side of things, and this is where I made some really interesting choices. So let me talk about some production things. I do all of my production in Ableton Live. Recording, mixing, mastering, production stuff. I love Ableton to death, and it does everything I need. So everything I do is through Ableton. And I just started recording elements and putting it together. I think I recorded the guitar melody and then kind of added things to it as we went, because as I said, I started with the guitar melody. Now, part of the reason the guitar melody came out is I wasn't just noodling around on the guitar. I was noodling around on the guitar, plugged into Ableton, and running through the Archetype Cory Wong plugin. I love this plugin to death. As I've said earlier in the video, I really, really love Cory Wong and everything he does. And this plugin is included in that. I use this plugin all the time for guitar tones. It really does some amazing things. And I'll talk about a little bit more about what I've done with it in this track in a second. But this plugin is how I was inspired to come up with this guitar line. I don't think I would have come up with this line without the sound of this preset. This preset is actually, if I go to Cory Wong, where is it? It's definitely one of the presets in here. I'm not sure whose it is. Wide lead. Here we go. It's this Sam Vallon warm lead preset is what I started with. And you can see PH, Patrick Hazler. I've made an alteration to it. So if you have the plugin, it's slightly different. But I'll show you everything I did here if you want to get the same sound. And starting with this plugin is how I got this melody. And part of it is that amazing delay sound and reverb here, and it's just timed exactly right, and it just inspired me. EQ pretty much dead with a little bump here, and then the compression on and the big rig overdrive. So I think I've gone through everything in there. You can pause if you really want all the details of where everything is. If you want to recreate my slight changes, I think the only change is maybe some timing on the delay, just so that it doesn't ring out quite as much in the recording. Now, Ableton sometimes struggles with automation, and one of the things was that for the D section, I turned off the delay. And you can see here the automation, the delay turns off. And so in the actual recording, what I had to do was bounce that to this track here, because Ableton struggles to bounce automation on some plugins. Cory Wong is one of them, the Archetype Cory Wong plugin. So in the actual track, what you're hearing is this track here. But they're the same. It's just I bounced this across to here by making this an in track, sending it to that track. So that was the Cory Wong plugin on the guitar, and that's where I kind of got everything set off from. Now, to record, one of the first things I do is program drums, so that I have drums underneath everything. It helps me keep in time when I'm recording, and it helps the track kind of sound fully fleshed out as I'm recording. As you can see here, my drums are in 4 sections, so that I can mix them all slightly differently. But each one still has all the information. It's just the individual elements singled out. And on each track, I used this plugin here, One Kit Wonder Modern Fusion from Get Good Drums. And this is what the drums sound like. Let's go from here. Nice and tight. So I program all my drums before I play. That's how that comes together. Now, the reason they're all in different things, as I said, is so that I can mix them slightly differently. So this is where maybe we want to talk about a little bit of the production of each element of the track and what processing I've done. So the kick here, I'm running through Archetype Cory Wong, and this is one of the secrets of this track. Is every single track, I'll give this away now. Every single track, every single part is being processed by Cory Wong, Archetype Cory Wong. Because this amp here on the Archetype Cory Wong, the DI Funk console, is a model of a channel strip. Which, if you're in a studio, you plug everything through a channel strip and you might process it through a channel strip. Now this one, I believe, I've been told, is based on a Neve channel strip. Don't quote me on that. But it sounds really good. It sounds really good, really clean with the guitars. But because it's a clean processor, it works really well for just about anything that you want if you want to process it a little bit. So the kick is going through Archetype Cory Wong. If you hear me turning it off and on there, it's basically just giving a little bit of tube saturation, a little bit of a low pass, boosting the lows a little bit, boosting the mids a little bit, and cutting the highs, and a little bit of compression as well on there. Then a little bit of EQ to catch the what's the word? The mallet against the skin. A little bit of a boost at the frequency where that's occurring, and then a cut on the deep low so we don't get too much boom, and then a cut of the very highs. Pretty simple processing on the kick. The One Kit Wonder kits from Get Good Drums, they're kind of designed to sound really good out of the box. So minimal processing here on most of the elements. Now the snare here, again, as I've said, goes through Archetype Cory Wong. We have a lot more tube saturation here because I want that grit there on the snare. A bit of compression, bit of high pass, not much low pass because I want that high sparkly sound. Bit of boost to the mids, bit of boost to the highs, bit of a cut on the lows, and I think a little bit of EQ, taking off some low end and taking off some very high end. Now the effects here are turned off, but the snare is also getting sent to snare sends. This is a send channel for the snare where I'm using a bit of compression to send just a compressed snare sound, and then delay and reverb from Cory Wong. So this is what the snare sounds like on its own. And there's a bit of EQ on the snare as well to cut out the resonant frequencies of the snare and take out the low end. So you can hear that the snare is going, there's a little bit of reverb and delay on the snare. That's coming from this track here. And that's side chained to the snare. So whenever the snare hits, there's a reverb trail, and whenever it hits again, that reverb trail is ducked by the sidechain, and we can watch that happening in real time here. So that when the snare hits, it just cuts through its own reverb channel on the sends. So that's the snare, and a little bit of volume duck there as well. The toms, again, going through Archetype Cory Wong. On the amp, these are the settings here for the DI Funk console, and a bit of EQ as well, take out the very lows of the toms. I don't like my toms too boomy. And you can see here, taking a bit of high end from the toms and cutting some resonant frequencies of those toms. They can be quite annoying. There must be a section with some real tom usage somewhere. Some floor tom there, and probably a fill somewhere here. Little fill there. What have we got else? Yeah, there's some toms. And without Cory Wong. With it again. You can hear just a little bit of tube saturation there, a little bit of grit, and a little bit of EQ on those toms to cut out the mids, boost the lows, boost a bit of the highs, which is interesting. But I can tell you now that that is almost certainly to get the sound of the stick against the mallet for those toms. The overheads, this is the cymbals, and I believe the overheads for everything is in here as well. Yeah. So you can hear a bit of snare there on the overheads, but mostly the cymbals. So on the overheads, I've cut the resonant frequencies of the tom and probably the snare as well. Yep, there's the snare, and that's the tom frequencies. And this, I think, is the ride ringing out. I wanted to cut that a little bit as well. If we take it to the ride over here, I think. You can hear that ride bell. I wanted to cut some of the frequencies there. And Cory Wong here, again, DI Funk console. Big high pass filter on there because we don't want any of that low boom from the toms in the overheads. That's coming from the close mics. No compression, but a bit of tube saturation. A lot of highs because we want that sparkle. And a bit of EQ to boost a lot of the high frequencies and cut a lot of the low frequencies. You can see basically almost like a curve there, so we get lots of highs and very little lows. The overheads are also getting sent to a send channel, overhead sends. And again, I'm using Archetype Cory Wong for the delay. No delay, but a bit of reverb here. And it looks like Shimmer is on. Shimmer is on. Bit of reverb there on the sends. And again, some EQ to take out those resonant frequencies. So the drums all together. Nice and punchy. Bass. Let's talk about bass. So, a lot of things going on here. I tend to be very picky with my bass sound. So, I did a lot of processing here. So, here's the bass. So, first of all, Archetype Cory Wong. We're going into just a compression in the pedals. And this is the settings for the DI Funk Console. Again, nice and clean, but we got a bit of tube saturation, a lot of lows, a bit less mids, a little bit less highs, to help that bass sound cut through. Bit of boost to some of these low frequencies, some of these middle frequencies, and then a cut to some of those high frequencies. And these don't need to be on. There we go. And no amp for the bass, just straight DI sound in the plugin. Now I have a low extender, and that compressor is just to bring out some of the low frequencies. I find that works just to bring a little bit of extra bass to the bass, help it come out. Punch and parallel just to make it a little bit more punchier. I love this bass one, and I tweak it a little bit. Sometimes I have a bit less, sometimes a bit more. So a bit of compression, and then I use this. Yeah, here we go. Warm up highs is a bit of a saturator, just to dirty up the bass a little bit more. And just helps some of those string noise and some of that grit in the higher end of the bass cut through, which I find I really like for a nice warm bass sound, especially in a track like this with few parts. And just in general, I like a warm bass sound. So that's a good one for that. Bit of a boost to the low end and a cut of the very lows. And then we have a kick sidechain. So whenever the kick, this is from the Waves C6 sidechain. So this is the frequency I talked about earlier on the kick. That's the mallet sound is getting cut on the bass, and the low end whenever the kick plays. So this is whenever the kick is getting triggered. Let's hear those together. Barely noticeable, but just really helps in the mix to get your bass sound to cut through. Next, keys. Going through Basic Suitcase DI. This is a little, this is a preset with Ableton Live 11 Suite. I just really like it. I use it probably a bit too much, but I really like the sound of it. The key volume turned down a little bit from where it was originally because I don't like my keys to be too clicky. Cutting out everything below the lowest note, which I think is an E. Maybe somewhere I play a little bit lower. But just cutting out all the low frequencies of those keys so we don't get any key noise. Archetype Cory Wong. Bit of compression, always good. The amp snob and the keys, if we listen to just the keys on their own, nice and gritty and dirty, and that's coming from this amp here, the amp snob. Volume a bit down, bass down, mids really important for keys to get those key frequencies to ring out. Bit of treble, bit of master, bit of presence. And then yeah, no, the drive is coming all from the amp. EQ, cutting some lows, boosting a little bit down here at 250. That's where those main notes for the keys are being played, I believe. And then cutting out some of those high frequencies to make way for the guitar. Keyboard's going through an amp as well. And has a little bit of reverb on it. Great. This is the keys. Oh, of course, and how could I cut off that melody there? Which brings us into the A section. EQ here, cutting the lows, cutting some key frequencies that were clashing with the guitar, boosting some highs, and boosting those resonant frequencies. Or not resonant frequencies, but boosting the frequencies where those notes are occurring, this main chord progression. We want to be able to hear that. Then the guitars. I already talked about the guitar melody, but then there's a couple of other tracks. One is this helicopter hand, and that's that... where is it? This 16th note thing. That's this part. This one here. Guitar 2. Here you can see. That's this. Yeah, so that's going through Archetype Cory Wong. The helicopter hand, that's what Cory calls this technique, where he's strumming like this. So I used that preset. Bit of compression, no amp, so just completely clean, not even going through the DI Funk console, but compression, some EQ here, and it is going through an amp. I don't know how Cory came up with this, but it sounds really cool. So because I was doing that clean strumming thing, I decided to use that. I'm using a utility here to boost the gain just a little bit, going into a drum sharpener, and this is just to make the transients pop a little bit more. So the transients, that sound of the pick against the string, that attack, this is a little bit of an effect to make that a little bit more clear. And then an EQ here to cut out the very lows and the very highs. And then a subtle stereo, you should have been able to hear that before, but it's just going around the stereo space a little bit to give it a little bit of... Just give it a little bit of movement. Last part, the guitar chug part. This is just this sound, which is just this little note, which in the context of that C section, that Cory Wong 16th note thing, is that accenting on the first accent of each bar. And this sound I achieved with this heavy rhythm 1 preset. This is a preset that I created for myself for something else, and I think I just chucked the Postal Service envelope filter on. So it's basically the same as what I was using for something else, but I've added the Postal Service. It's got compression, it's got the tube drive, and it's got the overdrive. So nice and thick, distorted sound with a tube drive and an overdrive. Into the amp snob, the dirtier tube amp. A bit of EQ here, taking out some lows, taking out some of the high mids here, and then amp ribbon on one of these cabs, and then no reverb or delay because I just want to cut off immediately afterwards. There it is. So that's all the elements of the track, and that's all the processing. So as you can see, Cory Wong, Archetype Cory Wong on everything. That channel strip is really effective, and I feel like I got a really good sound out of it. Now, I think one of the last things I want to talk about is going into this Em9 Wash section, which, if you remember on the sheet music, just looked like this. It was just a chord. So how I got this is this bass line leading down after the main melody. Let's just take a listen to it. So this is going into the Em9 Wash. So what I started with there was just, I think I started with the keys, this part here. So just this nice thick chord, luscious chord, and then just slowly adding some high notes to it. Let's check what I played there. Yeah, so an E minor 9, E, G, B, D, and then the high E, then the F sharp, that's the 9. And then here's the 11th, the A, the 5th again, the B, the root, and then the 11th, and then the 5th, and then, whoop, root, 7th. So just up and really high up there, the 5th again. So just slowly adding this nice lush keyboard sound. Let's add the layers up so we get the keys. Then I added on the bass, and the bass I played this lovely little line here. And so that's just a little line I improvised over the top of that chord as I was playing. You can see I snipped it up a bit here, but I just improvised that just over that E minor 9 chord. I just wanted something that just felt nice and low, nice and almost like melodic, right? And because I wanted this wash sound, I didn't want it to be too groovy. I wanted it to sound melodic on the bass. almost hear that in a melody as its own right, or as a melody in its own right. But that's the bass line there underneath. The next thing I added probably would have been drums, maybe. I probably would have started with drums recording, but the drums are just playing some cymbals, really. And then a fill into the next section. So just some washy cymbals to take over the higher end space of things. And then the guitar, this is where it gets really interesting. So in the guitar, I'm just plucking muted strings, and you probably would have seen this in the video. Nice. So as I talked about, this whole track started with the guitar part, and it started with the guitar part through Archetype Cory Wong, through this warm lead plugin. That's where I got my inspiration. And I found that just plucking those strings, this is what it sounds like dry. Let's hear it without Cory Wong. You can't even hear it. Let's turn this off as well so you can hear it. Barely hear it. Let me turn it up real high so we can hear it. So you can hear just some dead strings, but through that plugin, if I turn everything back on, you'll hear it just like fills the space with that delay and reverb. So I really just made that whole, just extra layer, just that ambient sound. And I really like that ambient sound, so I created this Em9 Wash section to give me the opportunity to play that sound over the top. Over the top of this nice wash sound. So all together. And then into the Cory Wong 16th note section. So I think that's everything I really wanted to talk about with this one. Nice little delay there on the Cory Wong to finish off. So, that's really everything that went into this track. The only other thing, low cut on the guitar, and then on the master, I'm using the master warm and wide preset through Ableton to master everything. Just nice, quick for the video. That's not important. That was just to create the little outro of the video, mixed slightly differently. But yeah, as you can see, that's the track. If you like this video, let me know in the comments. I've not done a breakdown in this much detail on my channel before, but this is kind of fun to make, and hopefully you found it fun to watch. It looks quite long, so if you've watched all this way, congratulations. And perhaps if you've watched all this way, you'd be interested in subscribing to the channel. I make music videos and videos about music as frequently as I can. And if you want breakdowns like this, let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe, because if people like it, I will definitely do more. So yeah, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you're interested in seeing more, and I'll catch you in the next one.